We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip. When it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Welcome to Under One Roof MTL, where we demystify home ownership 1 week at a time. My name is Robin Flynn, joined as always by LJ Aguinaga of LJ Realties. Good afternoon, LJ.
Good afternoon. How's it going, Robin?
Very well, thank you. Also joined by Fred Pichette and Martin Spalding of Fred and Martin Mortgages. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Robin.
Hey, Robin.
So let's get started with our trivia question of the week, brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. You can visit their store at the Blue Haven Shopping Center. That's 3705 St. John's Boulevard in DDO. If you think you know it, text us at 514-790-0800, and you will receive delicious cookies from Felix and Norton delivered straight to your door. Our question this week: what is the minimum down payment required in Canada for a home priced under $500,000? If you think you know it, 514-790-0800. Fred, I know you know it, but you're not allowed to play.
No, but you started with an easy question this year, which is good.
Yeah, so they're getting easier and easier as the weeks go by.
I mean, I think
You'll-
last year was probably easier, but
Pretty soon the question's going to be, what's my name?
yeah. Hey, that's a pretty good question. You got to pay attention. Not everybody gets that right?
Okay.
If you think you know it, 514-790-0800 to get those cookies. What's in the news this week? Well, Montreal's real estate market report was out for December. LJ, what do you got for us? What are the Q4 numbers telling us?
They've been very exciting. So total residential sales were down 4%, and that kind of is misleading as to what's actually happening in the market. Active listings was up 7%, which again is painting a very different picture than what the rest of the year painted. And if you kind of take a step back, analyze these numbers, because median price was up in all three categories. Homes were up 7%, condos were up 1%, and multiplexes, 2 to 4 doors units, were up 8%. Days on market was also down in all three categories, so it seems like we're getting very mixed messages from this. So what I did is I took a step back and I zoomed out and looked at the last 12 months. And when I do that, I see that sales are up across the board, prices are up across the board, days on market is also down across the board. And this is true for both the island of Montreal as well as the greater Montreal area. These are all indicators of a very strong seller's market at this time. Good properties are moving quickly and for higher prices, and bad properties are, well, sitting on the market. So it's more important than ever to not let your listing go stale.
Oh, that's great, because that's what you're going to be talking about next week on Under One Roof, is what to do when a listing goes stale. So, and make sure you tune in for that to get more information. What constitutes a bad listing, like a bad property?
A bad listing, as far as I'm concerned, there's probably 3 or 4 big trigger items. First of all, terrible photos. If you don't have professional photos that really showcase the property, we're off to a terrible start, because it's almost like a first impression when you're going through online, or if you're trying to even online dating, kind of sifting through what's available, what's not. Photos are that first metric that we're using. The second thing is not having the appropriate information and the triggers. So I was at a property earlier this week, and they did not tick off that the property had a garage. The property indeed had 2 garages, not just one, in an area the garages are usually quite rare. So the value for this property seems to be quite undervalued. The photos didn't showcase the garage or anything, and all of a sudden our buyers have a very interesting opportunity to potentially pick this property up that's not being seen by the masses, because a lot of us use the filters, as we should, to find properties that have our criteria. So making sure the property has the appropriate filters ticked off is super important for your listing. And then a really thoughtful description that really highlights the best parts of the property, right? The photos are going to get you so far, but when you can really talk to some of the best parts of living in this property, that's also going to help you kind of put that extra little bit of effort to convince maybe some buyers who are on the fence, but something resonated with them, to come check it out and see if it's really a good fit or not for them.
What does days on market mean? Can you define that for us?
Yeah, days on market is the time between a property goes live, so it gets listed, and it actually sells. So if a property was on the market for, let's say, 30 days between the time it went live officially and we actually completed the conditions on the sale, the days on market would be 30 days.
When should a seller be concerned, and how quickly should a buyer react if the days on market are going down?
So I would say that there's usually an opportunity for buyers once the days on market is over 60. At that point, the seller's going to have to make a decision as to where they're heading, what their game plan is. To give you the averages for Q4 in the greater Montreal area, single family homes were down to 39 days, condos were at 53 days, and multiplexes were at 52 days. So if ever you do get to that 60-day margin, you're above on all three categories, and that's usually where something's not right with the listing. Either it's price, either it's strategy, either it's photos, but something should probably be reworked or tweaked. For example, we make it a rule that at the end of every month, after 30 days on market, if we haven't sold the property, we do a full reassessment. What's working, what's not working, what do we have to adjust? Have there been recent comparables that are bringing the pricing down? Is there something that is not resonating with buyers and therefore they're not moving forward with a visit? We have to reorder the photos to maybe highlight a different part of the property first. These are all different strategies that we use to make sure the property stays fresh along the way.
So talking about buyers, so if we see days going down, a buyer sees something they like, they need to jump, right? Is that what we're saying?
That's 100% correct. Whenever something good is listed, it's usually moving pretty quickly. So the old adage of, oh, I kind of like it, let me see if it's available in a month, is usually not a good play. The property is more than likely going to be gone in that month's time. And therefore, if you are interested, the time is now to react.
LJ, technically, if a property is listed for over 180 days, there's a problem, probably, right?
There's probably a deeper problem. Now, a lot of the times, the 180 days are, to be honest, sellers who aren't really sellers. They're people who want to test the market, see what the market would really respond to their property, but they've put a price that really doesn't align. Or the property has some significant issues, whether it's structural, foundational, masonry, roofing, mold, all these kinds of things could be very big turnoffs for potential buyers, and they're not adjusting the price in consequence to make it attractive enough for a potential buyer.
So this year, we are in a new year at 2026. How many times have you guys accidentally written 2025 down on a piece of paper? That happens to me all the time. So in 2026, about 60% of all mortgages in Canada are coming up for renewal. Most Canadians are going to be facing monthly payment increases in the ballpark of $400 more per month. You need to prepare. You need to get ready. So, Fred Martin, what do people do who are homeowners to get ready to prepare for this added cost that they're inevitably going to be facing this year?
All right, Robin, let's do some math. What I did is I prepared a template example based on the fact that fixed rate mortgages amortized over 25 years with a 5-year term represent about 85% of mortgages to get back. It's the standard. So 5 years ago, during COVID, you signed for a mortgage for $300,000. It was amortized on 25 years with a 5-year term, and you signed it at a really low rate of 1.75%. Your monthly payment was about $1,200. 5 years later, at renewal, the rate is now, let's use 4.04%, which is two and a quarter higher. The mortgage balance after 5 years is now 250. Remaining amortization is 20 years. The new monthly payment, are you sitting down, is $1,500, which is a monthly increase of $300 or 25% more. So though the mortgage balance dropped by 50,000, the higher rate more than erased that benefit. Borrowers renewing today are paying more each month for a smaller mortgage, and that's the reality.
So, what can you do? I know Fred loves to talk about possibly extending amortization periods. Is that an option,
So,
Fred?
well, with what Martin says, it's important to look at your budget first, but because if you're not comfortable with the payment, maybe you're better off refinancing because it's going to bring you your monthly payment lower than just renewing with your bank. Like this is a very good, it's a serious question that people has to address because with the inflation, the cost of living, everything increasing, people intend to say, no, no, I'm okay. But are you really okay? Because if you're carrying debts, your mortgage payment increase, groceries increases as well, you're better off probably refinancing. And that's why Martin and I, we always says to our client, maybe the best option is to refinance if you feel yourself in a tight position.
So refinancing for in this case, this person who had $250,000 remaining, they were at 20 years left, they could refinance for probably 25 or 30 years. Would that bring their payment back down to about what it was at before?
Well, if you're going to refinance, you also have to look at your other debts. So here's an opportunity if you're carrying, and we've mentioned this often. A lot of people are carrying what we call bad credit or bad interest credit, which in turn are credit cards. So if you're carrying a huge balance in your credit cards and you're looking at renewing or refinancing, why not you roll in that back credit into a new mortgage? And when you refinance, it's basically starting at zero again. You're really reinstating a brand new mortgage. So what you can do is you can stretch out your amortization back to 25, 30 years. You can roll in your credit card debt, which would increase the principal balance of your mortgage. But all in all, you'll be better off because it will lower your monthly expenses and it'll give you some room to breathe.
If you are thinking about purchasing a multiplex, perhaps you want some passive income to roll in, that'll help with your monthly cash flow. Give the Plex Doctor a call, 514-709-6397. You can also visit their website at plexdr.com. Still to come, thinking about buying pre-construction? LJ runs down everything you need to know after we check traffic at the CJD 800 Traffic Center. This is Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. I'm Robin, that's LJ, that's Fred, that's Martin. We're with you until 1 p.m. Buying pre-construction in Montreal. Everything you need to know. Deposits, delays, risks, what buyers need to know before they sign on the dotted line. LJ, pre-constructions is a great idea in theory. You're going to get a brand new house, a toilet that no one else has ever used. A lot of benefits there. But it also comes with risks and things you just need to be aware of, right?
For sure, 100%. Like with anything, there's definitely pros and cons to it, and we can definitely break down what some of those are for you today. So, as you mentioned, some of the pros is that it's brand new, sparkly, shiny. Everything is yours. You got to choose the finishes more times than not, and you were the first person to occupy the property. Some of the most common cons that we see is really down to delays. I have yet to see a project that was actually delivered on time. So a lot of time, if you're planning on moving in one date, that could be 6 or 12 months later that you actually move in, even further out sometimes. Another thing that we're seeing is pricing increases. Back in 2015, we saw prices increase pretty significantly when we first had the condo boom in the Greater Montreal area. As we peel back and see how condos have performed since 2020, though, we see that there was really an oversupply that hit the market compared to the demand that we had available to us. So we've seen a lot of new buyers be upside down on condos that they've purchased in the last 3 years. So it's something where you have to be very careful and really make sure that you're paying fair market value today and not paying the future assessed potential valuation on it. And a lot of times developers were selling on those things. Another thing that's quite common is that developers are always selling on gross square footages, which is usually about 10% larger than what the actual net square footage is for the property. What I mean by that is that they might tell you that a unit is 1,000 square feet, and in reality, between the actual walls that you have, you're down to about 900, 910 square feet. So it's a pretty significant difference that you're working with there. And when you go to resell the unit at the resale, everyone's working on net square footages. So it's a pretty impactful shift in the price per square foot that you're paying, so you have to be very careful to make sure you're comparing apples to apples when looking at recent existing condos versus pre-sale new condos.
So they're including like the thickness of the walls in the square footage?
Exactly, they're going usually 2 to 3 inches behind the walls, basically to see where the concrete separation is or the dividing wall between the next unit and yourself is.
Wow. Okay. So mentioned deposit. How does that typically work? You decide you're interested. Is that like making a down payment on a property when you put a deposit down?
It's a similar theory, but it's due a lot earlier. So the way deposit structures work, and every single developer has their own deposit structure. But the most common one that we saw was you'd pay 5% at the time of signing, so when you sign the contract, and then you pay an additional 5%, usually about 90 to 100 days later, another 5% again 90 to 100 days later, and then finally another one 90 to 100 days later. They break it down over the time period of construction. So depending on how early you signed it, you might have a bit more time to pay down those different increments. Usually they're looking to collect at least 20% as a deposit, sometimes a little bit more. And they use these funds effectively as part of their slush fund when they're building the property, when they're going to negotiate, when looking to get financing. These are part of the funds that they're going to have available to them. Now, they're supposed to be held in trust, but they then can leverage them with financing through banks and whatnot.
Mm.
So this question would sort of loop in Fred and Martin. I guess somebody would need to be pre-approved for a project like this and would maybe even need to secure some financing ahead of time,
Well,
wouldn't they?
I see some crazy story back in the days. People making deposit on condo without knowing that it's gonna work. They will be qualified for, and it's horrible because you came close to the delivery date and you can't get a mortgage. You start to stressed out. This is why it's so important to be pre-approved, even though you're buying on plan,
What kind of security does a developer give a buyer when it comes to, yeah, 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 give me some money and I'll build your condo and it'll be ready in 9 months from now. And 9 months later, you go to the site and they haven't even broken ground. And all of a sudden, you get a message from Jamaica saying, hey, I'm really enjoying my time in Jamaica on the deposit that you gave me.
The recourse on this is going to be tough, is the reality. If the company closes and there's no one person to hold responsible for, you're really not in a good position, is the reality. And we've seen all sorts of crazy things in the last couple of years. We've seen big time developers end up selling a large portion of their portfolio to investors at a large discount because they needed to move some inventory. I've seen certain developers recently go into bankruptcy protection while they're still in the process of delivering buildings because they haven't paid off their creditors because of large construction expenses and whatnot. The protections, honestly, for buyers are quite limited. The way these contracts are drafted for developers is really protecting developers in every which way. And that's why working with a developer that you trust, that has been around for a long time, that has a strong reputation, is really, really, really important. Because if not, like you said, collecting from somebody in Jamaica could be very, very difficult.
So, what kind of due diligence do you do before you send your deposit in?
I would find their track record, see if there's anything registered against them, see what's registered against the property. Are they already not paying? Are there already significant liens on the property? Find out what other projects they've done, find out how delayed those were, what the timelines were. Maybe speak to some people who bought in them, see if they're having any issues with them. Look online to see if there's anything written about the developer as well as their previous projects. Online, there's a wealth of information as to how people have done and the good, the bad, the ugly ultimately. But ultimately, there's going to be a trust factor here, and that's where it gets very, very delicate. And that's where, personally, I have not done a ton of pre-construction because of that. That I found that there was a little bit too many unknowns, and really, we haven't heard a ton of horror stories, but there's been enough horror stories, even in Montreal and our local market, for me to be too nervous about kind of putting my stamp of approval on a lot of them.
Well, even those delays can be enough of a horror story in and of themselves. If you didn't renew your lease or something because you thought you were going to be moving into a condo, that could, render you homeless for a period of time. So, I also know a few people who have purchased pre-construction and not a one of them got in at their agreed upon date. So, what is a reasonable delay for a pre-construction?
6 months.
Okay.
6 months falls into the norm. I always tell people to expect a minimum of 6 months. So anyone who closes within 6 months of their original expectation, the developer did pretty good as far as I'm concerned compared to others.
LJ, let's say I bought a pre-construction today and it's going to be delivered in 2 years. I bought it, let's say, for $400,000, and 2 years later, it worth $500,000. But I don't want to move in or to buy it anymore. Can I transfer my contract?
So what you're doing is called an assignment of the contract. That's the official term for it. And most contracts I've seen say that you cannot assign your contract. So I've seen some buyers actually negotiate to have that condition waived. So they do have the right of assignment.
Yeah.
Developers will still either charge you a management fee or a service fee or will limit the way it has to be done. So there's a lot of restrictions associated to that. That was super popular in Toronto in the mid 2010s. But in Quebec, there's always been a lot more restrictions around it, and only really the most savvy of buyers have looked to work that clause in their favor. But even lately, selling it for a higher price has been very difficult. I've seen clients as recently as purchased the property for $980,000, and the most recent appraisal that we did was 750 on it. So there's been pretty big gaps on these units.
If you're not sure if now is the right time to buy, give LJ a call at 514-500-4040. He'll help you figure it out. Coming up, has your job situation changed from employed to self-employed since you last renewed your mortgage? That could complicate things. Thankfully, Fred and Martin can help you. We'll find out how after the news. This is Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. My name's Robin Flynn with LJ Aguinaga, Fred Pichette, and Martin Spalding. If you're self-employed or you've had any sort of changes to your current employment status since the last time you renewed your mortgage, it could make things a little tricky come renewal time. So what does that mean exactly? Are you in trouble completely, or is there something that you can do? Fred and Martin from Fred and Martin Mortgages, guys, what do you do? I know that you can handle this because you just did it for me. I was self-employed and my mortgage came up for renewal and you guys were able to get it done. So I know you guys can figure it out.
Well, why don't we throw back the question to you, Robin? Because When you were employed and you applied for a mortgage, what did the mortgage broker or what did the financial institution ask you for? Question one. Question two, now that you're self employed and we just renewed your mortgage or refinanced your mortgage, how much more difficult, how much more complicated was it for you to obtain your mortgage?
I wouldn't say it was more complicated, it was more paperwork, basically. So the first
Exactly.
time around, I just had to prove that I was employed. So I was working here full time at CJD. So I had a letter of employment from Bell Media, who owns CJD, from my boss, attesting to, yes, she's worked here, how long she's worked here for, and how much money she makes. And I believe I also provided some T4s for a few years. Whereas,
T4s and a pay stub. Boom. Bing,
exactly.
bang, boom. And if you've got enough income, we can get you the mortgage. Now that you're running your own business
Mhm.
and you're paying yourself a salary, either through a salary or a dividend at year end, and a lot of self-employed people have a tendency of leaving a lot of money in their companies. So the companies look really very flush, but they're drawing very small incomes, and that's where the problem arises.
Yes, because on paper, the amount of money that you make isn't as much as you actually are earning. But yeah, I had to provide some bank statements going back for a year. I think I provided some client contracts as well. There was a bunch of things I had to provide, T4s as well, or tax returns rather, sorry. Anyway, there was just more paperwork, T1s, yeah, more paperwork that I had to provide than the last time around.
So knowing that there's a certain amount of complexity when you're self-employed, often we say to people that if you're coming up for a renewal or you're applying for a mortgage, start thinking of it well ahead of time. But if you're employed, 3 months, 6 months, that should be able to allow you to get your paperwork in order, start filling out the application, provide the paperwork, we send it to a lender, and you get qualified for your mortgage. But now you're self employed and now you're working with an accountant, you're working with a broker, you're working with a lender. You don't want to declare a lot of income, but you want to apply for a mortgage. You see where I'm going with this. So take a step back and say 24 months out, or even 36 months out, you're looking to buy a house, you're looking to switch lenders, you're looking to refinance. All these things will force you to requalify, and when you're an employee, let's say you're making easy number, $100,000 a year, and now as a self-employed employee, you're paying yourself 40. What do you think is going to happen? The lender's going to look at, wait a minute, when we gave you that mortgage, you're making 100 grand a year. Now you're making 40 grand a year. But then you say, oh, but wait a minute. I got a ton of money in my corporate account. Doesn't that count? No, it doesn't count. It's what you're generating in terms of income. Your net income is what's going to allow you to qualify. So knowing you're about to do something like renew, refinance, purchase, speak to your accountant, speak to the mortgage broker, and prepare your paperwork, prepare your filings so that when that day comes, when you pull the trigger and you want to buy something, you've got the proper income, which will allow you to qualify. If not, and I'll throw it over to Fred, because there is another way, but sometimes now we have to go to alternative lenders, and what we'll use is your bank statements to qualify you. Fred?
Yeah, well, it's so true, Martin, what you say, because I keep saying to our self-employed clients that if you want us to send you back to a regular bank because you're now with a B because you didn't declare enough, you got to increase your income. And obviously, some people says, yeah, but if I increase my income, I'm gonna pay more taxes. Of course, you're gonna pay more taxes, but you can get them both of them, and that's why it's so important as a self-employed to declare more every year or at least a minimum that's sustainable for a mortgage.
Fred, what percentage of your clients would you say actually take the advice and get themselves organized to move over to an A bank versus the percentage that ends up staying with an alternative bank for a longer period of time?
Well, LJ, that's a great question because I got some clients says I'm fine with a B. I pay a little more of interest, but I don't pay more taxes, and I'm very happy with it. And Fred, if you could negotiate me a better rate every year or every 2 year with the B, I'm pleased with. A percentage, it's hard to say. You'll really have someone who love to be with a B, that's he's happy with it, and you have the other one who's saying, "Well, I'd like to have those rate at 3.99 or 4% instead of 6." What should I do? Well, then when it starts, like Martin and I, we run the numbers, and I told them, listen, you need to declare, forget your 30,000 a year, try to declare 60 plus your wife income. It should made it, which is, it's really, I would say, not maybe half and half, but you really have two different kinds of people there. But the real business person sometimes who makes a lot of money, it doesn't declare that much because, as Martin says, they live in the company, he will sometimes stay with a B lender, like more a longer time.
Because a lot of people, when we say we may have to take you to a B lender or an alternative lender, all of a sudden, they get frightened because they think, oh my God, I'm gonna be paying 20%. No, it's about a point and a half more than a traditional lender. It's not the end of the world. And what you have to do is you have to put all the numbers on paper. And once the numbers are on paper, they'll start to talk to you. So if you want to pay less in income tax, declare less, but know that you're going to probably pay a little bit more for your mortgage. And on the reverse side, if you want to declare more because you want a traditional lender, then expect to pay more in income tax. So you really got to do the math, and we can do the math for you. And then we can present the two scenarios to you. But 9 times out of 10, I agree with Fred. Most entrepreneurs will stay with the B because they don't want to pay more in taxes. There used to be a huge cash economy, right? And so, cash is, you used to say cash is king, but not in mortgages.
No, cash is gone.
And cash is gone. And also we can't use cash, right? If you're generating income, let's say in the gray market, we can't really use that cash to qualify you for a mortgage. So a lot of people call us up and say, well, I got a ton of cash in my safe at home. Can't use it. It's what you declare.
The bank won't accept a photo of a briefcase of cash available?
Well,
Not the photo I sent in yesterday, that's for sure.
Not even the B lenders?
yeah, well, maybe 25 years ago, I don't know, but lately, absolutely not. But
Maybe the lenders will accept gold bars or diamonds.
yeah,
Then we're really in the shady world.
yeah. I just want to say, usually, I always advise our self-employed clients to start declaring a little more because at the end of the day, you need to be bankable. And probably LJ will be agree with me. If you want to grow your portfolio of real estate, you need to declare income. It's not only asset; it's about income to qualify for a mortgage.
So you're not, guys, pay your taxes.
Well, it's not that. It's just being proactive. See, it's looking down the road and saying, okay, what do I want to do, and how do I want to finance this? And if I want a traditional loan, then I got to declare more, and I can't declare more overnight, right? It's usually an average of the last 2 years. So you got to talk to your accountant and say, okay, what's it going to take in terms of income so I qualify for whatever amount I want to borrow? And then you call us and you validate those numbers with us. If not, then we'll use bank statements and we'll do what's called a stated income. And then we'll present it to a B lender. And more than likely, if there's a decent cash flow in your commercial account, you'll get your loan, but you'll pay more for it.
And you got to talk to your accountant as well, because if you suddenly go from declaring $40,000 a year to $100,000 a year, the CRA may have some questions for you, right?
Oh, wow.
More than
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. One of the topics we were going to cover in the first segment was our property taxes are going up. So whenever the government entities see more money, they want their share.
To find out more about what your lending options are, you can get in touch with Fred and Martin. Go to fredandmartin.com. Coming up, our property of the week, plus the answer to our trivia question of the week. What is the minimum down payment required in Canada for a home priced under $500,000? If you think you know it, 514-790-0800. The answer is coming up after we check traffic. Wrapping up on Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. I'm Robin, that's LJ, that's Fred, that's Martin. It's time for our property of the week. Where are you taking us this week, LJ?
I want you to live in the heart of downtown Montreal at 505 Lucien Lallier, Unit 505. This spacious two-level condo offers 3 bedrooms, a gas fireplace, a modern kitchen, and not one but 2 private balconies, including 1 full-size terrace with panoramic views of the city and mountain. Enjoy over 1,080 square feet of style, light, and comfort. Just steps from parks, groceries, the Lucien Lallier Metro, and top restaurants. Bonus, heated indoor parking and access to an in-ground pool. Offered at $850,000. Call 514-500-4040 to book your visit with LJ Realties today. Or better yet, stop by our open house today from 2 to 4 p.m. Amanda will be there to receive you. Yes, Mark?
Did you do a video? Is that the one you did a video for? Is that
That is
his
the one.
story?
Yeah, exactly.
I believe you called it the condo.
It is.
Condo. Not just the kind of pretty one. Not just this is the condo. Honestly, the view is spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to see it, I think you posted on Facebook and Instagram.
Exactly. And it's
You have
exactly
to go see the video. Oh, it's really sweet.
It's on the Victor Hugo Crescent, which is one of the most prestigious crescents in Montreal, filled with townhouses. But because we're on the 5th floor overlooking that, you have this beautiful unobstructed view facing directly west. So tons of sunlight comes in. In the winter, my clients say they barely heat the unit because there's so much sunlight coming in, which is incredible. And you don't have a vis-a-vis with another building, which is super common in the downtown area, right? With fully unobstructed views, which are fantastic. For food in the area, I mean, there's so many great options, but literally less than 100 meters away, you've got Chez, which is an excellent Middle Eastern restaurant. Mama, if you want a little nice coffee, cookies, etc. But before we wrap this segment up, if you're looking for a home in the West Island, stop by our open house at 66 Rue Huron in DDO. This beautiful split-level home features 4+1 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a beautiful yard, and a garage. Stop by and say hi to Marina from 2 to 4 p.m. during our open house today as well.
Wow, busy, busy, busy. So many houses to sell, so little time, right?
I think this year started very strong.
Ready to rock and roll.
Amazing. Okay, let's get to the answer for our trivia question of the week, brought to you by Felix and Norton. Our question this week was, what is the minimum down payment required in Canada for a home priced under $500,000? The answer is 5% of the purchase price. Now, why did I specify under $500,000, LJ?
Because if you go over 500 but below $1.5 million, you have to put 10% down on that spread. Now, I love that you use this question because although it may have sounded like an easy one to our mortgage experts, Fred and Martin, you have no idea how often people tell me, hey, LJ, I'm still saving for my 20% because I really want to buy a property this year. And I say, no problem. If you want to put 20% down, that's totally okay. But have you considered putting less down? And they say, oh, I didn't know I was allowed to put less down. So I want to hammer it home. I filmed a couple of videos on this as well. People still, for whatever reason, have this old adage that it's a 20% minimum down payment. I'm putting together a presentation for a webinar I'm doing on Monday, actually. Check it out. It's on my Instagram feed, and you can buy with as minimum as 5% plus 10% on that spread over that $500,000 price point. So it's important to note.
So building on that, it becomes an insured mortgage. An insured mortgage, the rate generally is lower than a conventional mortgage, but there is an insurance premium that you add that you can roll into your mortgage. And the other thing that a lot of people don't realize is also you need to put aside 1.5 or 2% of the purchase price for closing costs. And a lot of people say, what are closing costs? Well, when you buy a new property, the city is going to welcome you with a tax. You will also need to finance your moving expenses, your first mortgage payment, and your notary fees. So you need to factor that in, and it has to be in liquidity. In other words, you can't put that on your credit card once you have made your 5% down payment. You need to show 1.5 to 2% in liquidity. In other words, in cash.
So basically, you need a minimum of 6.5 to 7% of the purchase price to put down what you need and have your closing costs.
Yeah, but that 1.5% is always on top of your down payment. So if you put 10 and 20% down, you still then need that 1.5%.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so congrats to Peter in St. Anne de Bellevue for correctly saying 5% of the purchase price. You're winning some cookies from Felix and Norton. Check your text messages so we can exchange some info. That pretty much does it for us for this week. If you want to ask a question and have the answer featured on the show, you can always email us at underoneroofmtl@gmail.com. You can also reach out to LJ, Fred, and Martin individually for that personalized one-on-one advice. LJ, where do people go to get in touch with you?
You know what? If you want to plan a meeting with me, because I'm starting off this year with a lot of meetings, this is a time of year when people are trying to figure out what their real estate plans are. And I love meeting with people who are thinking about making a move. There's a website, www.meetwithlj.com. stylestip.com, where you can plan a meeting with me. You can book it directly on both of our calendars at a time that works for both of us. So go on there. If not, we've got a ton of info on our website, ljrealties.com with an IES at the end, or on all socials with the handle LJ Aguinaga. That's LJAGUINAGA, as well as LJ Realties. If you are looking to free up some of your time, you already have some investment properties and you know what, you want to focus more time with your family, you're tired of the potential phone call at a time where you're already occupied with something else, reach out to our property management company, Plex Doctor, to take over and give you back your time and freedom ultimately. You can find us at plexdr.com or call us at 514-709-6397. Terry would be more than happy to walk you through our service offer.
Fred, Martin, where do people go to get in touch with you?
It's funny, Robin. Fred and I have been getting a lot of emails from people saying, I hope I'm not wasting your time. And so if you have a question, if you have a doubt, or you're just curious, pick up the phone, give us a call. Send us an email, book a meeting through our website. The best way to contact us, whether you're a first-time home buyer, you're considering renewing or refinancing, you're looking at a reverse mortgage, anything that has to do with financing, reverse mortgages, commercial, residential, just go to the website, fredmartin.com. All the information is there to book us, and we'd be happy to not make the time, take the time to answer your questions.
And fredandmartin.com, but Martin, you're so right. If you're one of the 60% of Canadian who have a mortgage renewal, it's worth a little talk together for sure.
If you missed anything, you can listen to the show in its entirety on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. For LJ, Fred, and Martin, I'm Robin. Have a wonderful day.